provide some book. So we are planning to have a presentation uninterrupted for about 20-25 minutes. Then we'll go to our discussion, designated discussion. Mr. Jahidur Rahman, you'll have about 10 minutes. And then we'll open the floor. Participants here or watching us online, they can also comment in the comment box. We'll take questions from them or comment or feedback or their reactions. And then we'll again come to you multiple times for your response or your comment. And then we'll end the session. So without further ado, let me invite you, Mr. Majid Hussain. Please take next 20 to 25 minutes to share your research.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and a good afternoon to everyone. So as sir has already mentioned, and before sir, it was Zara. They've all already mentioned that we're going to talk about the intergenerational impact of Ultra Pro graduation program. Now, the Ultra Pro graduation program, as Zara has already mentioned, is well known for a tool that's been used for poverty alleviation. And there has been a lot of RCT or similar kind of evaluation of this sort of program where there is an asset transfer. And we've actually found positive impact in most of them, both in short term or medium term, being 7 to 11 year follow-ups, and across many countries. So there have been studies that evaluated such programs in Africa, in India, and we have the Ultra Pro graduation program in Bangladesh. Now, just to give you a context on what the program is about, so this particular RCT was designed before 2007. So 2007 was when the baseline actually happened. What happened before that was to find the actual ultra poor. So it was before 2007, it was called the targeting the ultra poor. So that involved actually finding the sample that we used in 2007. So that involved going into the villages and using a participatory method where the villagers gave in information. So where there was a meeting held with almost all of the villagers. And so households were ranked based on the information that we got from the villagers and the representative from BRAC that went to the village and that sort of conducted those meetings. So, and based on those ranks, the ones that were deemed as ultra poor or the lowest in the wealth ranking of all the households in the village were then considered the ultra poor households that we would later visit, or that would become the sample of the study. So, so for this specific RCT, which sort of started in 2007, we found about 8,000 households, so something around 7,990 odd households. So we had, so this whole thing was stratified at upazila level. So this the whole RCT happened over 13 districts of Bangladesh, mostly the northern districts, so the most poor districts. So mostly districts from Rangpur division. We have Netrokona as well, which is away from Rangpur division. We have Netrokona, we have Kishoreganj, and then from the south, we only have Madaripur. And so we have 20 different upajalas from all these 13 districts. And each of these upajalas, from each of these upajalas, we have one treatment branch and another control branch, so stratified at the upajala level. And so this is a clustered randomization. So the randomization happened at the BRAC branch office level. So villages that are within the catchment area of each of these branches are clustered into a treatment group or clustered into a control group. So this way we have 40 treatment clusters or treatment BRAC branch offices and 40 20 control branch offices and 20 treatment branch offices. So a total of 40 branch offices. And from there, from these branch offices, we have a spread of around 60-40 households, 60-40 ratio of treatment to control households. So that's about a background of how we came up with the sample. Now, these households, and also how we selected the households. Now, what was the intervention about? So any asset transfer intervention involves some transfer of asset, either conditional or unconditional. This is more of a conditional asset transfer, where we transfer the asset. We then so let's halt there for a bit. About a menu of about 6 different asset combinations were offered to each of the treatment households. So this menu included assets of equal value, right? Each of them had equal values, roughly equal. They were not exactly equal. So what were on offer? So there was a cow on offer, a pair of goats, and then there were poultry in offer, and also sewing machines and such. So anything that's a productive asset that could then sort of bring in a stream of income for the household. About 90% of the households, of the treatment households, chose to have cow. So much so that even now, if you go to the villages and say, oh, we're looking for these households, they would say, pardon my Bangla, ওই যে যারা গরু পাইছিল তারা নাকি? And we'd be like, yes. Yes, so they're well known for getting a cow from BRAC, at least in the treatment households. So then after they chose the assets were then transferred to these households. And along with the assets, a certain amount of money, pecuniary benefits were also given to provide for the assets for a certain period of time so that they could feed the cow or they could sort of establish the business. So a smoothing effect there. And then after a while, they were also trained about how to sort of generate revenue from these assets, and how to actually market the products and take them to actual vendors or customers. Now, this asset transfer and the follow-ups continued for 2 years. So from 2007 to 2009, that's when the asset transfer and the intervention actually happened. The baseline survey happened before the asset transfers. So we have follow-up surveys that happened in 2009, so right after the asset transfer. In 2011, 14, there was one in a rather smaller scale in 2018, and finally, the one that we're talking about now in 2004. Sorry, 2024. So that's a 17-year follow-up. As Zara already mentioned, this is rather unprecedented because no such 17-year follow-up has been evaluated quite yet. Also, to give you sort of like an asterisk, or rather something that would sort of help you understand the results later, is that after 2011, about 20% of the control group also received the assets. So, or rather the intervention. So this, and the results that we are presenting today do not account for that. So any impact that we see is rather understated. And we'll get to that in a bit. So let's move on. So as I was saying, the estimation that we have conducted is in ITT. So so even if they refuse to take assets, or if for some reason the asset died or some other unforeseen circumstances happened with the asset or with the intervention, even those people are included as treatment. So again, it's understated. So it's rather straightforward ITT equation. I have not included the constant here because I've already had, or yeah, because I've already included this, the fixed effects. So yeah, there is the constant there as well. So yeah. What we will be looking at is the beta, so which is going to give us the effect that actually we're going to see, the understated effect that I've already mentioned. Now let's look at how much of the sample that we could actually get to. Given the scale of the study, and also the fact that we're going back to them after 17 years, the attrition rates are pretty low. So if you can see here, we were able to get to more than 90% of the original households. So the households that were our original respondents in 2007. So we could get to 92% of them at least, with a 8% attrition rate. Now, the traced respondents. So once we got to the original households, we actually asked after their children who were between the ages of 0 to less than 16 back at that time in 2007. Now they are between the ages of 16 to 33 years old. So those are the people that we then traced and surveyed. So these children, let me call them, or the trace respondents, we could get to about more than 85% of them. So we had about a 14% attrition rate there. More so for the boys, um, because there is more mobility, if I may say so, among the boys, um, uh, because there's a lot of migration happening there. So we couldn't quite reach most of them. We could not reach more of them, not most, more of them. So there's a 16% attrition there, and 11% among girls. Also, if we look at the boys, um, there's about 3% more attrition in the control group among the boys. We do control for that in our results. So there is that. Now, if I were to dive into the results, um, so again, after 17 years, and with about 20% of our control group also receiving the intervention, indicating that any estimate that we mention are actually understated. We still see that there is an increase in consumption. These are actually nominal values. The TACA values are actually nominal values. So there is still an increase of 26, about 27K in consumption, and an increase in about 11,000 in income, and also savings. So the households, the original households, are still better off. We will have a look at this. We will have a look at these values in comparison to what happened earlier as well. So let's get into that. Okay, so we have more. We have an increase in their assets as well, asset accumulation over the years. So we see that there is an increase in the productive assets, which is this, these are the productive assets apart from the livestock assets. So if you add them together, this is the increase in the productive assets without land. And then we have an increase in land amount, so at least one decimal more. And one decimal in the context of the rural Bangladesh is a rather significant amount. And this is the value of land. So it's not just that the land prices have increased, it's also the fact that the amount of land that they own is more. So there is that. And as I promised, the comparison of the last few years. So this is the comparison from the previous follow-ups that we've had. So as you can see, after the 2000, so this is again annual consumption. And now this comparison is not in nominal values anymore. This is in purchasing power parity dollars of 2007 prices. So this is standardized in 2007 prices. So now as you can see that there's been an increase in the impact from 2009 to 2011, and then it was tapering off. So there was a fall in 2014. However, after 2024, it picked up again. So this 2014 could be a reflection of the fact that that some of the control group also received the intervention just about 3 years before. And given enough time, in 2024, we can see the difference widening again. So there's that. We see something very similar in asset accumulation as well. So now this is about the original households. Also, what's new in what we're looking at is the fact that how the children that lived in those households are different from the control group. How the effect of asset transfer actually translates through generations. So so we look at boys and girls separately. So here's a short sort of overview of the girls and the boys that we have in our sample. They're both 16 to 33 years old. More of the girls are married than the boys. And so also about the girls and the boys. So some of the girls, some of the children that were living in those households were not actually the children of the respondents. Some children were were their relatives. Some were just living in that household at that time. So we traced all the children that were living in those households between the ages of 0 to less than 16. And now these children are not all the children of the original households. 84% of them are actually the children of the original respondent. The others were children living in those households, but not necessarily the children of the original respondent. Oh, sorry. So more of the girls have children, given that more of them are married, so which makes sense. Involved in earning activity, more of the boys are involved, but when we see the impact, it's more interesting for the girls. Education, there's something interesting there as well. As you can see, they've only completed their primary education. And the spread among boys and girls is pretty much similar. As you can see, the number of observations here. So let's move on. Impact on girls. Let me give you some spoiler. The fact that impact on girls are more interesting than the boys because we see more impact on the girls. But yeah, there is an interesting aspect among the boys as well. We'll look at that in a bit. As you can see, if we have not been actually able to decrease the age of marriage, or rather, well, somewhat we've decreased the number of, or if they have any children or not. But this doesn't give you much of a, this doesn't give you an intuitive look at what the intervention has actually done. We'll break it down and have a better look at this just in a bit. In about their involvement in income generating activities, we can see that there is an increase among the girls, and also there is an increase in their savings. However, the years of schooling has actually declined. I'll talk about that in more details in a bit. So let's actually dive into the results in more detail. So we'll break down, for the girls, we'll break down the results into age groups. So let's have a look at that. So as I was saying, um, that we have been able to, so the intervention has actually increased their involvement in income generating activities. So mostly what we've seen is that they're involved in livestock rearing, as they've seen from their mothers anyway. So, and you can see that it has happened across their different age groups. And as you can see that even the control mean is pretty high as we go up the age. So meaning that more people, more girls are generally involved in income generating activities as they're getting older, but more so for those from the treated households, and significantly so, as we can see. Also, if we look at their income, now this is their personal income. This is not the total income of the household. This is their personal income that they can take away from whatever income generating activities that they're involved in. So now, let me give you a bit of context. So the kind of income generating activity that they're mostly involved in are livestock rearing, and that is considered as a household income. So hardly anyone can sort of take away income from for their personal use. So it's that income. So if you can see that again across the older age groups, you'll see that there is an increasing amount of income, and more so, significantly more so for those that are from the treated households. Okay, so now impact on savings, again, throughout the age groups, especially the older ones, are having more savings because they have had more time to accumulate their savings, and increasingly more so for the treated um, girls, or the girls from the treated households. Um, Now, about schooling. Now, this is rather interesting. Um, a study from Africa, if I recall it correctly, I think it was from Tanzania, um, found that households having any sort of livestock or agricultural assets have adverse effect on the education of the children. Now, so this takes us back to a policy question. What kind of assets should we have on offer for an intervention like this? Should we actually have agricultural assets or not? Because clearly these are actually having a negative impact on the years of schooling for the children living in those households. As you can see, increasingly so from with higher ages, with higher age groups. Sorry. Now moving on. What we see here is the fact that number of or proportions of girls married has not changed. What I want you to focus on is the fact that even at early ages, so those who are not, so what I'm essentially trying to say, that we haven't been able to push back the age of marriage, even though it's negative here, it's not significant. So we haven't been able to push back the age of marriage. What we have been able to push back on is the age of the first child. So it is significantly less likely for um, those in the younger age group. Uh, sorry, this is not, again, this is not showing um, the age of marriage. Um, we haven't been able to change that. So this is what's showing the fact that we have been able to push back the age of the age at which they're having their first child. So as you can see, the youngest age group are having are less likely to have a child, meaning that those at the older age groups are, well, they're having children and there is no difference between treatment and control, but we have been able to push back the age at which they're having their first child. So even though, as you can see from here, there is no impact in the age at marriage, uh, as you can see here, for some, even they're marrying at a younger age, but that's not the case for them having their first child. So this is rather interesting that we've been able to push back the age of having the first child. So there is a bit of agency in fertility there, although there isn't much so in terms of when they're getting married. Now let's move on to the boys. As I've already mentioned, that we don't see as much of an impact in case of the boys, but we do see that their savings have increased. So there is that. In terms of boys being married, well, a few of them are married because, uh, well, a lot of them are involved in income generating activities, and a lot of them have migrated. So it's, yeah. So that's what we will look at in terms of boys. And what is rather interesting is to see if the boys are the children of the the original respondent or not. So we look at boys, the impact on boys, based on whose children they are, or rather, if they are the children of the main respondent or the original respondent or not. And we see rather interesting impact there. So, as you can see, this is basically a comparison between um, the father's land holdings compared to their father-in-law's land holdings at their marriage. So what we see is that boys who are the children of the actual respondent are marrying into families with larger land holding than their own parents. So they're marrying into better families, whereas the children who are not the children of the main respondent are actually not. So that's rather interesting. And if you can see that those who are not the children of the main respondent are actually having to pay more in terms of then mohar as well. And it's much less for those who are actually the children of the main respondent here. So moving on. It's again true for the economic engagement, although the control of the control group is at a pretty high level as well. So it's 91% of the people, of the boys are actually involved in income generating activity, which makes sense because more income generating activities, or rather jobs, are available for boys in a rural setting anyway. But it is more so true for those who are not the children of the respondents. Maybe they want they don't care if their own children are more involved in economic activities or not. But if you can see, about 91% they're also involved in economic activities. But we don't see an increase, or rather an impact of the intervention there. So on savings, as you can see, those who are not the children of the main respondents having more savings because of the fact that there is an impact on them having or being involved in a job. So it's probably basically a consequence of this. Also, savings, in terms of savings, we've seen throughout that there has been an increase. It was a part of the training module as well. Maybe that has sort of somehow translated from the parents to the children as well, and which is why we're seeing an increase in savings both in boys and the girls. I will wrap it up quickly. As you can see, even for the boys, at least for, well, there isn't an impact per se, but for those who are not the children of the respondents, are having fewer years of schooling compared to those who are the children, although there isn't a significant impact. Overall, I feel like we should be reconsider the kind of asset that we're transferring, because it may and is having a negative impact on the years of schooling. Overall, also, it is rather exciting. It is basically a proof. It's rather exciting for humanity itself, because it's proving the fact that it's not the ability of the people which is hindering them from getting out of the poverty trap. Rather, it's the big push that they need to get out of that trap and get into those better opportunities that are available for those with higher wealth accumulated. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Madhu Hussain. Very interesting presentation. I have few observations, but before I share them, let me now go through Mr. Mujahidul Rahman. Please take next 10 minutes to provide you feedback and comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me the floor, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really an interesting presentation. I'd say, especially because this is about the long-term and intergenerational impacts of ultra-poor graduation program in Bangladesh. So I'd like to congratulate and really appreciate the research team from Breck University and BIGD for undertaking what is clearly a highly ambitious, I'd say, in policy relevant study. Okay. And I will be quite precise some of the points that I'm going to make. But first of all, I'd like to talk about some of the significant findings, like contributions of, at least for three reasons. Number one, I would say very few anti-poverty interventions in the global south, have been followed over such a long period, with 17 years after the original randomized intervention. So this is the single most important point, that is note the worthiness of this study. And most development programs, they claim to have more transformational impact, but we rarely see observe whether those impacts persist across decades, and for this case also across generations. So we're looking at intergenerational impact of the TPG program. So this is the first reason I'd say it's quite noteworthy study. Secondly, I'd say the paper moves beyond immediate welfare indicators and examined intergenerational transmission mechanisms, especially how parental economic mobility affects their children's education, fertility, marriage, labor force participation, savings behaviors, and similar. So this is precisely something, some kind of evidence that we need if you were to understand whether poverty reduction programs can, like have impact about the long-term intergenerational context. And then number three, I would say the study also demonstrates the, relevance, I would say continued relevance of the graduation approach, which is pioneered by BRAC and now replicated around in a number of countries. So these findings suggest that the initial asset transfer and the support package that was with the transferred asset like generated persistent gains in consumption that is demonstrated in the presentation, you see, and then income and savings, and also in terms of productive asset accumulation, even after 17 years. So I'd say in developing economics, such kind of like impact that is sustaining about this length is exceptionally difficult to report and record, right? So I'd say these results deserve serious attention and definitely having clear-cut policy implications. But at this point, I'd also like to talk about some of the findings, like to recapitulate the findings that we have been discussed, the major findings from the presentation. I have noted particularly the sustained increase in household assets and savings. The evidence suggests that the households were not merely consuming temporarily, but we're also able to accumulate productive assets, like in terms of land, agricultural, in livestock, as you have already, shown us that it's over time. So this is like the persistence of livestock and land accumulation, especially important if you think about the rural agrarian economy in our country. So that's particularly relevant for the households, those who are in part of the, program, they receive the treatment. And another striking, I would say, like findings from this study about the gendered impact, like intergenerational findings, quite fascinating, especially for girls. This study, finds reductions in early fertility for the, younger age, and then increased their participation in income generating activities, and there is higher savings as well. So these evidence are socially meaningful because, like delayed fertility and their greater economic participation, like meaning that agency will have multiplier effects across, like even for future generations as well. Like I would say, I'd say at the end of my presentation, like there could be like possible extension to even coming the another generation. So these effects will continue to have, positive outcome for the generations to come for these families. So that's also likely, indicates the continued persistent effects of the poverty graduation approach program. At the same time, I'd like to also say the findings is kind of revealing some tensions, trade-offs, right? When you look at the increased economic participation among girls, but it is also coinciding with their lower years of schooling, right? So as you have already said, there are some evidence that, but I'd say for the boys, similarly, they're showing like higher savings, but little improvement in their educational outcomes. So these results kind of show us that the poverty reduction alone does not automatically translate into broader human capital achievement. So there's something more to it in the equation, right? So I'd like to now offer a few constructive reflections and a few questions to engage with the audience and with us today. So my first point of concern is the mechanism. So the paper clearly demonstrated the long-term effects, but we're not I'm curious about the pathways, like how I think is quite underexplored, especially like if you don't know the exact channels, how these intergenerational impacts occurring. Is it because of, like, for example, through increased household income that we are seeing improvements in children's education, like not education, but in consumption and other behaviors? What about like maternal agency, like that might be affecting the children's behaviors? So is this because of improved aspirations or because of improved nutrition during childhood? So I think so. Or what about the impact of the social status and community perceptions? So understanding and exploring the mechanisms, so surely deepen the theoretical contribution of the study. So we know there are persistent results even after 17 years, but I would say like to be able to explore the mechanisms through which these effects are channeling through, across generations would be tremendously, powerful. Second, I believe like the paper could engage more explicitly with the concept of trade-off between economic empowerment and human capital formation. For example, if you look at the women entering income generating activities in the earlier ages, but they are not completing as high as education. So how should we interpret this outcome? Is it a welfare gain, or maybe I would say a constrained choice under resource under poverty, or mixed outcomes? So what is the implication for policy? So how should we proceed, right, from this trade-off? So we are clearly seeing that kind of result. And I'd like to also encourage the authors to explore heterogeneity in terms of the different age cohort you have explored, different age cohorts within the girls and boys, right? So, and then there are also biological children of the recipients of the treatment, and then also the other one who are residing in the households during that time. So if you could look at the region specific disaggregation about like asset base, marital status of the parents, educational backgrounds of the mothers, so that will also help us to explore mechanisms further and explain this kind of trade-off. So these dimensions could which households benefit most from this graduation approach over time. I mean, in the long-term considerations. And regarding the attrition, as you said, it's a 17-year-long study. So I believe it's quite, understandable. It's like 16%, but we know and it is reasonably balanced across control and treatment group. So I would rather say, like, if you look at some additional robustness discussions, would strengthen the findings. I believe it is there in the original paper. It's the presentation. So that's fine, something that I would like not to discuss further. But finally, I focus on the policy implication. If you, this is a very important message from the study, right? So poverty intervention should not be evaluated only for its impact in the income gain in the short run. That's what is being done mostly. But I would say that the real value may emerge after, say, a decade, or after, it might take longer time to translate than in real outcome, say in the next generations, right? So if whatever you have documented in terms of their improvement in the savings behavior, especially more important, I would say the reproductive choices, like they're delaying their child rearing ages, right? Social mobility. But I was also curious about their why, I don't know, like you might shed further light on about their delaying their marriage, age of marriage. So that could be interesting, right? So, and then this paper also kind of give us reminders about the process of economic transformation. It's kind of, it is linked to gender norms. It's almost quite persistent. You cannot just simply change the gender norms, even in a such longer time with asset transfers. You need additional, interventions. And these kind of programs, as also clearly visible from this study, is that it going to be more effective when combined with investment in other, like secondary education, like more social norms, and more behavior change communication, reproductive health services, social protection systems. In that case, the effect of poverty reductions program would be more pronounced. So all in all, I would say like this is an extremely important and timely study, and I really again appreciate the research team to conduct and be quite ambitious and persistent, and if possible to also extend this study in the even for longer duration. That could be like quite valuable. So thank you so much for like having your brilliant presentation, and thank you, Din sir, for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Jahidur Rahman. Let me now ask the participants if anyone has any question or comment or any feedback. So let me now few of my observation. Let me now share with you. So I was just wondering, the impact was actually downward trending in 2014, And you said that it might be because of additional intervention, control group receiving intervention. So why don't you think that the same thing can happen even in longer time period, 2024? There will be many more interventions. The control group is maybe having different type of shocks and interventions. So how can we actually claim the impact, whatever the impact we are seeing between treatment and control? How can we attribute that to the intervention given 17 years ago? So I'm just thinking about is there any way to check the robustness and whether the impact is actually causal or not. There might be some association because if some families receiving one-time interventions, that might change their uh, endowment, that might impact their outlook and participation in economic activities. But whether that is significant to generate this impact or not, I think we need to have more uh, causal uh, causal method to relate whether these impacts are actually because of this intervention. So another thing is you showed us that the impact on women's education is negative. So I'm wondering that is it because of the type of intervention given, um, mostly livestock transfer or sewing machine. So does it increase the women's work, or I mean, is there any way to actually separate the impact by the asset type, the livestock and shaving machines? Probably if a household receiving shaving machine, probably the young girls or women in that family would be using it, and they might be spending more time working than attending a school. So I think it would be interesting to see the impact by type of asset transfer. And the other thing is that uh, you showed us the comparison between boys and girls. I was not actually sure whether the comparison for that comparison is for treatment group or for control group or for the whole center. Uh, so it would be actually useful to identify for which group the difference is displayed. So these are a few my observation, but otherwise it's very interesting work. And if some way you can establish it as a causal, that would be very interesting. And since you have data, I guess for 2024, probably 2027, 2009, 2011. So whether there is any kind of like longer term, including all the observations, not just 2024, also including past data and having more control, more covariates, and also if we can identify the channels of impact. Is it because of the asset or is it because of their uh, aspiration change because of that and change in endowment, or is there any other behavioral change that actually accompanied that asset transfer? So, what are the channels through which this impact are happening? So if you can see that, it would be easier to understand to with, link the intervention with the outcome. But thank you so much, Madhu Hussain. Please take next few minutes if you have any feedback or if you have any response to the discussions, comments, or my observation. Please take next few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments and the questions. They're all very pertinent. So I'll start with you, sir, Dean, sir. Um, so yes, the comparison. So I'll start with the comment that you made about what I was comparing against. So yes, each age group or each group that we have compared were actually a comparison between controls. So the lighter color is the control and the darker color is treatment. And it's been consistent throughout. So we have always compared treatment against control.
So yeah, there was a table. You
Oh,
showed us
right.
the table.
So the tables here, we are
No,
seeing
no,
the
not
difference.
this one.
From here.
Yeah.
Is this what you're
No,
talking
no.
about, sir? Or these?
There was a table, two column, boys and
Oh,
girls.
so this is not a comparison. This is just what we have on data. It's just percentages. So these are percentages. This is the actual mean years
So are they
of
different between treatment and control?
that we have explored later, sir.
Okay.
That we have explored later here. So if we go back here, the impact on girls, years of schooling has actually declined. Yes. So that's a difference in treatment and control. So this is just this is more of a the mean values. That's that. That's about it, sir. Also, you asked about the kind of asset transfer. We're actually exploring that. We're actually looking at heterogeneity in terms of asset transfer. Also, this is another paper that we're working on, trying to explore or trying to rather unpack the consequence of education that we see in our results, where we actually see that it is the households that received um, agricultural assets. Now, there's only a few, very few, less than about 10%, less than 10%, less than 5% even, who actually received non-agricultural assets. So again, that result is something that we have to work on a little more to be able to actually say that it is the agricultural assets that are actually causing a decline in education. Also, like you mentioned, so we are relying on the random selection that was done back when the RCT was designed. So by the virtue of it being a random selection, there is a treatment and control that we have is actually giving us is actually sort of in effect controlling for all the factors sort of that sort of eliminates the existence of any exogenous variable by the virtue of an RCT. And we're relying on that for it to be causal in that aspect. Also, the fact that you mentioned, again, very pertinently so, that some other intervention could happen in the control households. One that we are not aware of, one that BRAC is not aware of. But then the likelihood of that happening is also true for treatment households because they are
Uh, Jahid, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but probably
Oh, I
some.
think we lost Manju Hussain.
It's,
Uh,
I think he's facing a bit of connection issues. In the meantime, if you could wait for him a little bit, and in the meantime, we could discuss on the topic, I think that would be good. I think he's trying to join.
yeah, okay.
like, is there any question from the audience? Like,
Yeah, is there any question? Can you contact Manju Hussain or whether he can join us or not?
Yes, yes, he's trying. He contacted me. He lost his connection and is trying to join. In the
Okay.
meantime, we could take more questions if anyone has any, or we could discuss
Any
amongst.
question from the audience?
Or even if there is any comment on the presentation, we would love to hear that.
okay, I just one point that I missed to kind of discuss. Have you noticed that there was one point when like there was insignificant but negative effect on food insecurity? Like because there is significant gains on income
That
and
was
consumption.
food security or food insecurity,
Food
right?
security. I think it's food
Mm.
security. So given
I
this,
apologize.
okay, I think
Yeah.
Manju Hussain,
Yes, I apologize.
can you
Sorry,
hear?
I had
That's fine. We
a
live in
connection
Bangladesh.
issue.
We all understand it. We are very
Thank you,
familiar
sir.
with the situation. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Please go ahead.
Sorry. So, like I was saying, if control households did receive any other
Yeah.
intervention,
Uh, I mean, both
yes,
control and treatment can receive different type of many
yes,
different interventions or
right, sir. So,
shocks.
right, sir. The likelihood of that happening is equal for, well, the assumption is that they're equal for treatment and control. However, treatment households over the years have certain different aspects compared to the control households because of the nature of the intervention itself. Uh, so it may so happen that some of the control households are receiving more intervention, or they're more likely to receive intervention of similar sort. Now, if that does happen, then our results are understated. And given that, we still
It
see
can
an
be,
impact.
yeah, it can go in many directions. My
Right.
concern is that you have like 2014, which
Yes.
shows declining the impact.
Right. Right.
But then after like 10 years, we have seen a jump. To what
Right.
extent we can actually uh, attribute the jump to the intervention which was given like 17 years ago? Because
Right.
we are just simply applying the simple ATT framework,
I
right?
did. Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
the randomization done like 17 years ago
Right.
may not be like all the characteristics, the randomization. So the baseline characteristics, maybe they were balanced,
Right.
But after like 17 years, there can be like substantial changes in those
Right.
baseline characteristics. So either you need to claim that the change in characteristics is also because of that intervention, then we can count them as an outcome. Or if it is not, then actually it would be very difficult to attribute the changes we see in 2024 uh,
Right.
to the intervention back 17 years ago.
Right,
So,
sir.
is
So,
there any more robust way to actually isolate or to control for these changes? I mean, the simple ATT method, I guess, is not enough for the randomization done in 17 years ago. So, what would be your response?
so sir, for that, so we are employing the ITT, like you just mentioned, but we are also, well, the paper is not sort of quite, it's still it's a working paper. So we're working on sort of controlling for the time factor. So we're controlling for each of the outcome variables that we see in the previous data. So we're controlling for, so say for consumption, we're controlling for the consumption that we're seeing, the increase that we're seeing in 2024. We're controlling for all the data that we have received previously. So 2009, 2011, 2014, and so on. So we're using that to sort of control for the fact that if there is any sort of other aspects involved apart from just the time difference itself. So that's one way we're trying to sort of control for that. The other aspect that was talked about was, I think, the mechanisms. Well, we're actually trying to explore qualitatively, at least, to try and see how this impact is translating from the mothers to the daughters, especially in income generating activities and in income as well. So some of the initial findings show that it's because that their mothers were doing it, that they are also following what they've seen. Also, the fact that these income generating activities are also mostly so especially livestock rearing and sewing machines, they were catered to the females of the households, and these assets were actually given to the females of the households. So
But what
which
look,
is why
the most girls are
yes,
married, right? Right.
yes,
So they would be in the in-laws house, right?
yes,
So if we see the economic activities has increased,
right,
so is it because they have like better environment in in-laws compared to, I mean, uh, since the number of calls, so the merit is also lower in case of treatment compared to control. So
right,
is it just the impact is not the economic uh, involved in income generating activities. It's just the delayed marriage that actually contributing to this outcome. Am I clear?
right. So are you saying that it's it's not that it's the fact that they're getting married into a better family, that's why they're
No, I
sort of
mean, so the treatment in treatment household, girls are married later, right? Compared
Not
to
not necessarily. No, actually, the years of marriage. If we, so if I can share my slides again. Share. Here. Oh, sorry. So, as you can see, at different age groups, they're marrying earlier across the different age groups. And the youngest group, they're less likely to be married, but again, not significantly different from the control group. Well, across the other groups, it's, well, except for this one, they're pretty similar. So it's not the case that they're actually marrying less, or rather,
there
right.
was I guess, regression results, right? For married.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So the proportion of girls in a treatment household is less married,
By
right?
1%. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, please continue.
Right. So as you were saying that in terms of heterogeneity, or rather, sorry, I was talking about the gender norms, or rather the question that you asked um, about policy, or rather why they are more involved in the specific kind of the IGA. It's what we are seeing from the initial results that we have had from the qualitative study is that they're following in the footsteps of their mother, and it's actually and they're being able to do that even though that they're married. So and yeah, and fewer of them are married, but still they're still being able to continue their income generating activities. Now, if you are asking me about the mechanisms, well, we're still exploring a lot of these issues. So one of the things that we have explored is regarding education, and that is something that is a very policy relevant as well because of the kind of assets that are being transferred. Should we be sort of sticking to those kind of assets, or should we sort of reevaluate the kind of assets that that may sort of not cause the trade-off, like you so eloquently mentioned, that although the economic opportunities are opening up, the years of schooling is declining. So do we actually have to have that trade-off or not? If we move into if we sort of offer some other kind of assets, maybe we don't. So there is that as well. We're also looking into other heterogeneity, for example, in terms of the kind of households they are, in terms of the so the fact that we've been able to reduce the or rather we have been able to push back the age of having the first child. However, with sticky gender norms like the age of marriage, we've not been as successful. So we're looking at different heterogeneity for that to understand, to sort of explain a mechanism if we can. So yes, thank you for those comments, and they are under, so we're still trying to investigate as we go. So thank you
No,
again.
very interesting, Marjo Hussain. I hope you do some additional robustness check and you get some interesting findings there. But thank you again for sharing research. We wish you all the best. Thank you, Jahidur Rahman, for being here as a discussant. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great vacation. Eid Mubarak to all of you, and hope to see you again
Thank
in
you.
our June's webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.